What really happens to your soul in the first year after death? Shocking truth revealed. The air crackled with suspense as Dr. Harper stood at the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, leaning forward, every eye pinned on him. What if I told you their essay hidden truth about the first year after death? A truth that could make you question everything you thought you knew about life and what comes after. The crowd gasped, a ripple of excitement sweeping through the room. Whispers darted like lightning. What did he mean? The room buzzed with restless energy, curiosity sparking brighter than the harsh overhead lights. You see, it said that during that delicate 12 months, the soul teeters on the edge of two worlds, one filled with the weight of the past and the other cloaked in the uncertainty of eternity. Stories surfaced of spirits caught wandering, trapped in a limbo of unfinished business, like a soft fog lingering just before dawn. One woman, a local librarian named Mrs. Lowry, claimed she had spoken to her late husband nightly, their conversations as vivid as they had been in life. She described feeling cold breath against her neck, whispers brushing her earlobe. Was it grief? Or a message from beyond? Then there was the account of young Billy Thompson. After his grandmother passed, he began to see strange lights flickering outside his window each night. It was a phenomenon so uncanny that it sparked debate among skeptics and believers alike. I felt her, I swear. She was watching over me, Billy insisted, his wide, innocent eyes trembling with the weight of his words. The crowd leaned in, chilled by his raw conviction, a blend of fear and nostalgia swirling through the hall. But it didn't end there. There were anecdotes about ghostly figures appearing at family gatherings, and strange occurrences, a book falling from a shelf when no one was around or a favorite song playing on the radio moments after someone had mentioned a loved one. Each tale layered on the next, crafting a terrifyingly beautiful tapestry of the unseen, leaving everyone on the edge of their seats. What forces were at play? What awaited them after crossing the threshold of life? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As Dr. Harper droned on, he introduced the most chilling stories, yet the ones that blurred the lines between fascination and horror. What if the reality was more sinister than we dared to imagine? What if those who passed weren't watching over us but rather tied to this world out of deep-rooted rage or despair? The crowd shifted, unease creeping in like winter chill, questions lingering in the air like smoke. Who decides where the soul goes? And what happens to those who refuse to move on? The clock ticked ominously in the background, counting down moments as curiosity spiraled into dread. A shiver ran down Dr. Harper's spine as he spoke of a dark legend, the echoes of a soul wronged, doomed to wander, searching for vengeance. A hushed tension spread, wrapping around the crowd. Could someone hear their cries? Could the dead see what we do? The night wore on, and blood ran cold as one question remained: what truly awaited them in the beyond? As Dr. Harper wrapped up his talk, the palpable energy in the room shifted. Uneasiness settled like dust in a sunbeam, and murmurs grew. People exchanged glances, weighing the gravity of his words. Where did the souls really go? What did it mean if they were tethered to the living out of anger? In the back of the room, Margaret trembled. She had come looking for answers about her brother, lost too soon to a tragic accident. Each story Dr. Harper recounted felt like a personal reflection, squeezing tight the grief still raw in her heart. Was her brother still here? Was he watching, lurking in the shadows of her life, angry, perhaps haunting her with messages she couldn't understand? She buried her face in her hands, suppressing an increasing panic. Suddenly, the lights flickered above, drawing gasps from the crowd. It was brief but powerful, like a jolt through the already buzzing atmosphere. "Did you see that?" someone whispered. Dr. Harper, sensing the shift, squinted against the dimming lights. "You see," he said, regaining the attention of the room, "this isn't just about tales, it's about reality, too. People have documented these phenomena, strange occurrences that some call coincidences, while others name them hauntings." Margaret's heart raced as she remembered the flickering lights at her place, the odd things that had happened since her brother's death, the music coming on at strange hours, the unmistakable scent of his cologne lingering in the air long after she had put his things away. Was it him? Was he still close? Then came the murmur of a newcomer. Daniel, a rugged man at the back, jumped to his feet. "What about vengeance? What if they're angry? We could be in danger." His eyes burned with wild fear, and he gestured to the audience. "What if those souls see us as the reason they couldn't find peace? We've wronged them." The crowd gasped again, uncertainty spreading like a contagion. Conversations fizzled into worried whispers, eyes darting to one another, fear intertwining with the haunting stories they had just heard. Dr. Harper stepped forward, his voice steady but grim. "The souls that roam are often searching for closure, for justice, or simply seeking to be understood. Some may even hold resentment toward the living." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle across the room. "If they feel wronged, if there's unfinished business, there could be consequences. That's when the lines blur, and fear creeps in." Margaret felt the dread swirl within her, echoing her own unresolved feelings. What would happen if they never find that peace, she thought, her chest tightening. Would he reach out to her in anger? Did he feel betrayed by the world that kept him bound to it? As if perfectly timed, the lights flickered once more, plunging the room into total darkness. A thick silence hung in the air, thick enough to cut with a knife. Gasps erupted, a collective intake of breath, and then the unmistakable sound of a soft whisper floated through the dark, chilling each spine. "Help me!" Margaret's heart dropped as panic surged, and her mind raced. Who had spoken? Was it her brother? Or was it something far more malevolent? A soft rustle in the corner suggested movement, shadows creeping closer. The lights flickered back to life, revealing a scene frozen in shock. A woman stood alone, pale as a ghost, and her gaze pierced through the crowd. Margaret's breath caught in her throat. The woman looked directly at her, the look in her eyes wild, desperate. "What do you want?" Margaret found herself whispering, heart pounding. The answer loomed in the air, and Dr. Harper was not speaking anymore. The crowd had hushed once more, affixed on the woman. The heavy tension pressed in on Margaret as reality twisted, and a question hung in the air. What did this figure from the beyond want? Was she the key to unraveling a dark mystery, or was she a harbinger of something far worse? Margaret stepped forward, compelled by an invisible force, drawn to the unknown that awaited her. And just like that, as the whispers grew louder, the stage shifted. What was she about to discover? Margaret's heart thundered as she moved closer to the woman, her instincts battling between dread and curiosity. The air crackled around them, dense with unspoken words, an electric charge that seemed to unite them in that moment. Faces from the crowd blurred, their fear palpable, but Margaret felt a strange bond forming between her and the apparition. "What do you want?" She tried again, her voice trembling but resolute. The woman's mouth moved, but no sound emerged at first. Instead, her gaze flickered toward the crowd, then back to Margaret, her eyes reflecting a deep, haunting sorrow. "Help me," the words echoed, a low, ghostly chant that threaded through the stillness, bringing a cold sweat to Margaret's brow. Her fingers curled involuntarily at her sides, grappling with the urge to reach out and touch the woman, to pull her back from whatever torment bound her. Dr. Harper finally gathered himself, stepping forward as if to shield his audience from the possibly dangerous energy radiating from the woman. "What is it you need?" he asked, his voice steady but unsteady, eyes revealing his own trepidation. Margaret watched the woman deepen her gaze, and as if compelled by forces beyond her understanding, she took another tentative step. Can you communicate? Tell me what happened to you." The figure's despair washed over the audience like a thick fog, threatening to smother them. Unfinished business, she whispered, and the tension ratcheted up a notch as her voice grew faint, echoing as if pulled from another realm. Daniel, still standing at the back, clenched his fists. What if it's a trap? What if she is here to curse us for something we didn't do? His words were laced with panic, sending a ripple of fear through the room. The woman's features seemed to shimmer and blur, her image flickering like an old film reel. You have to find the truth. Before she pointed a delicate finger toward Margaret, the intensity in her gaze resting heavy on her. Before it's too late. Margaret felt her breath catch in her throat. Before what? She gasped, reaching instinctively toward the woman, but the air around her thickened, and she felt a push, firm yet gentle, an invisible barrier holding her back. Suddenly, the lights stuttered again, dimming as though the room itself was holding its breath. The whispers around her morphed into frantic voices, the tension swelling until it felt like it might burst. She caught a few words. He left. Don't let them find the truth, Dr. Harper. Margaret yelled, desperation flooding her voice. What does she mean? What is happening? He turned to her, still riveted by the figure. Sometimes, when souls don't receive closure, they linger. They may carry pain, resentment, and they target those who brought them grief. Was it me? Did I? Margaret started to tremble, horrified at the thought that her brother might feel lost because of her. No. The apparition cut in, her voice almost a wail now, rising above the chaos. You must remember the accident. It's not what it seems. That definitiveness in her tone sparked something deep within Margaret, igniting questions that had burrowed into her mind since that awful day. What if there was more to it? What if her brother's death wasn't just an accident, but a puzzle waiting to be unraveled? And then, darkness fell again. The lights went out entirely, plunging them into a void. The only sound was the insistent pounding of her own heartbeat. Everything held its breath. Margaret. She spun around, eyes wide, the voice echoing through the gloom. Was it Daniel? Dr. Harper? Or perhaps her brother, calling from a place just out of reach? In the silence, something shifted behind her. A cold wave swept through the air, sending shivers down her spine. She felt the brush of a hand, a whisper like a caress. Find me. Panic surged as Margaret turned, staring into the suffocating black, the weight of the woman's urgency pressing down on her chest. Could she actually find the truth? Would it lead to salvation or doom? And who would she become in the process? As the lights flickered back on. With a crackling discharge, Margaret was left standing alone, eyes locked onto the spot where the woman had stood. But there was no trace of her now, only an empty space and swirling questions. What had she just stumbled into, and what had been unleashed? The only thing fading was uncertainty, and it left a gaping chasm for answers waiting to be found. The light flickered back to life, revealing a room that felt strangely distorted, like a reflection in a funhouse mirror. Moments stretched, leaving Margaret standing alone in the middle of that confusion, her heart racing. Faces filled with terror surrounded her, but they felt far away, blurs of panic in her wide view. Where did she go? Whispered someone in the crowd, dread defining their expression. Margaret could hardly focus on them. Her mind spun, each gasp drawing in the chilling weight of the woman's presence. Margaret. Daniel's sharp voice cut through the fog. What did she mean, find the truth? She opened her mouth to respond but found the words tangled in her throat. What truth? The thought spiraled in her mind, but all she could conjure were remnants of nightmares, flashes of her brother's last moments, each upsetting detail replaying like a broken record. Dr. Harper stepped closer, his brows knitted tightly together, eyes darkened with worry. We need to leave. The energy in here is unstable. Unstable? Daniel echoed. What if she comes back? Then we'll face her together, Margaret said, her voice finding strength despite her trembling resolve. She felt a grip of determination tighten around her, as if the woman's desperate plea ignited a fierce flicker of courage within. We can't ignore this. I can't ignore it. A pause. Daniel exchanged a glance with Dr. Harper, the weight of what had just transpired heavy on their shoulders. But where do we start? he asked, desperation creeping into his words. The accident, Margaret whispered, the words breaking free like an uprising. There's something about the night he died. I need to remember everything. Are you sure that's wise? Dr. Harper interjected, concern gripping his tone. Reliving old traumas can make things worse. Or it could set me free. Margaret's eyes sparked fiercely as she recalled the woman's voice, an unsettling beacon shining through the casual shadows. I owe it to him. We owe it to her. Without another moment to lose, she turned toward the exit, urgency driving her forward. The room began to shift around them as they maneuvered through the throngs of crowd-struck faces, and Margaret's senses felt heightened, gripping at the laughter that contrasted painfully with the suffocating tension bred from the encounter. As they stepped outside, the evening atmosphere met them with an eerie calm. The moon hung low in the sky, light bathing the cobblestones in ghostly luminescence. An ominous chill whispered through the air, quickening Margaret's resolve. We should gather information, anything that could help your memory, Daniel suggested, his voice low but firm. What if we dig too deep? Dr. Harper warned again, visibly agitated. What if we awaken something dark in doing so? What's darker than the truth? Margaret shot back fiercely. As they made their way toward the remains of the wreckage, the place where everything had gone so wrong, her heart pounded fiercely. Would she uncover secrets better left buried? Then the rustle of leaves turned their heads sharply. From the shadows emerged a figure bathed in moonlight but cloaked in darkness. Fear surged, and Margaret's breath caught in her throat again. Whoever this was, they carried the weight of the past with them, an echo of unfinished business that couldn't simply disappear. Stop! Margaret shouted, her voice reverberating with authority she wasn't sure she possessed. Who are you? The figure stepped forward, the air thickening with an unfathomable tension. An answering smile curled the stranger's lips. I've been waiting for you. Could this be another soul lost in the dark? Or was this the very truth she had to confront? With a pounding heart, Margaret realized this was just the beginning. She steeled herself for whatever was to come next, the stakes rising like smoke from unseen flames, urging her farther into the night. What had she truly unleashed? And what terrible connection tethered her to this enigmatic figure? Dread settled in the pit of her stomach, the night held secrets she couldn't yet name. The figure stepped closer, and Margaret felt a chill claw down her spine. A tangle of shadows clung to the stranger, wrapping around them like whispers of lost souls begging for release. The moonlight cut through the surrounding darkness, revealing features both familiar and disconcerting. I know you, Margaret said, squinting. You were there, that night. The figure tilted its head, a glint of amusement flickering in its eyes. Not just there, dear Margaret. I was part of it, and you too. You just don't remember yet. Daniel shifted nervously beside her, his breath hitching. What the hell does that mean? The stranger stepped fully into the light, and Margaret's heart sank. It was a face she recognized from fleeting nightmares and well-shrouded memories, a woman with wild hair and piercing eyes. The resemblance to the woman in the room echoed eerily. You're the one who... Margaret stumbled over her words. You're the one who spoke to me. In the room. You said I had to find the truth. The woman smiled, an unsettling mix of sorrow and mischief. Truth is a slippery thing, don't you think? But it'll break you if you don't face it. Enough riddles. Daniel snapped, anger mixing with fear. What do you know about her brother's death? The woman's expression darkened, like clouds rolling in before a storm. Sometimes, the dead speak when we least expect them to. Sometimes, they reach out to the living to settle unfinished business. You've been chosen, Margaret. Can you hear them? Chosen. What does that even mean? With each passing heartbeat, the air thickened. Margaret felt the tension crackle around them, a chorus of murmurs drifting on the night breeze. What happened that night? Margaret pressured, her voice rising as frustration boiled within her. What do I need to remember? The woman's gaze flickered towards the wreckage, a deep-seated sadness mixing with the shadows. You're closer than you think. But tread carefully. The truth is alive, and it wants to be found. You may not like it, but you must confront it. Confront what? I'm doing this for my brother, for his memory. Then brace yourself, Margaret. The woman raised her hands, as if summoning something from the depths of the darkness. For what lies beneath the surface is more than you can imagine. There's a girl who needs you, one who echoes in pain. And she's waiting. Fear gripped Margaret not just for herself but for the others around her. What girl? The woman leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. You'll know her when the time comes. She's tied to all of this. To you. Suddenly, a distant crashing sound echoed through the night, followed by a low rumble that seemed to come from the very ground beneath their feet. The pavement shook, and Margaret stumbled back, her heart racing as everything began to swirl. What is happening? What did you do? Daniel shouted, his eyes darting around in panic. The figure laughed softly, the sound unsettling like wind whispering through dead leaves. Change is coming, Margaret. Look closely. The ground split open, a fissure of dark light revealing faces of memories long buried. Screams spiraled upward, and Margaret could feel the weight of every sorrow pressing against her. Find the girl. Find the truth. Then, as suddenly as it started, the vision faded and the woman was gone, leaving only the echo of her laughter hanging like a ghost in the night air. Margaret stood there, heart racing, her mind reeling. What had just happened? How were things connected? Daniel's voice pulled her back. We can't stay here. Whatever that was, I don't want to be part of it. But Margaret wouldn't budge. No. We have to go deeper. We've unleashed something tonight, and now we need to see it through. With his eyes wide in fear but understanding her determination, Daniel took a hesitant step forward. They turned toward the wreckage again, the air tinged with urgency. What awaited them in the shadows? And would they uncover the truth, or would it drown them in chaos? Margaret felt the night's weight crash down around her, but her heart whispered a dangerous question. What if the truth itself was more horrifying than she could ever imagine? Margaret felt the ground tremble beneath her feet, as if the earth itself was alive, groaning under the weight of secrets yet to be uncovered. The darkness around her seemed to pulse, breathing in and out, drawing her in as she locked eyes with Daniel, who stood rigid with terror. What do you think she meant? He asked, his voice shaking. I don't know, but that girl, she has to be important. We can't just walk away, Margaret replied, her resolve growing with each word. Together, they approached the wreckage, debris scattered like forgotten memories clamoring for acknowledgement. The last echoes of the woman's laughter hung heavy in the air, almost taunting them. Suddenly, a flash of light pierced through the darkness, reflecting off of something shiny amid the wreckage. With a quick nod, Daniel moved cautiously toward it, heart pounding in rhythm with the quaking ground. Margaret followed closely, her pulse racing not only from fear but anticipation. Was this a clue, or merely more chaos? As they neared the object, Margaret gasped. It was a locket, glinting like a beacon amidst the dark rubble. She reached for it instinctively, fingers trembling. Wait! Daniel shouted, grabbing her arm. What if it's cursed or something? Margaret pulled her arm free, frustration bubbling. If it belongs to the girl, it might lead us to her. With determination, she opened the locket. Inside, a photo of a girl smiled back at her, radiating innocence and joy. There was something eerily familiar about the girl's bright eyes, a spark of life that shot straight through Margaret's heart. I know her, Margaret whispered, her voice barely above a breath. Who are you really? Feeling a chill wash over her, she closed the locket quickly. It was as if waves of memories crashed through her mind, drowning her in emotions she hadn't fully processed. What is it? What do you see? Daniel pressed, his voice a mix of anxiety and curiosity. Her name is Emily. Emily Turner. She was in my class in elementary school. A sudden rush of memories flooded in, now sharper and more vivid than before. When her brother died in an accident, the same year. The night everything changed. Daniel stared at her, wide-eyed. You think yes? I don't know. She snapped, frustration invading her thoughts. She could feel the weight of Emily's unresolved fate pressing down on her, like leaden chains. But if she is here, if this locket is here, then maybe I have to get to the truth for her sake. I owe her that much. Okay, so what's next? We search for signs. He suggested, hesitating but obviously drawn into her urgency. Just then, the earth trembled again, this time more violently. They both stumbled, and the shadows around them seemed to twist and swirl like a vortex. Margaret, look! Daniel pointed as the shadows formed vague shapes, faces flickering in the darkness, pleading, crying, and reaching out to them. Margaret's heart raced, terror tightening her chest. What do they want? Maybe they want us to find the truth, like she said, Daniel replied, his voice barely a whisper, anxiety creeping in. The ground shook once more, and a voice cut through the cacophony like a knife. Help me. Did you hear that? Margaret shouted, fear coursing through her. Yes, but where? The shadows danced chaotically as they seemed to gesture toward a path leading deeper into the wreckage, where the dark light spilled ominously from the fissure that had opened earlier. I think it's leading us somewhere. Heart pounding, they exchanged a look, knowing they stood on the precipice of something monumental. Together? Daniel asked, steeling himself. Together. They stepped forward into the darkness, the echoes of the past clamoring behind them, and the voice "Help me," ringing louder, like a plea for salvation. What awaited them in the depths of that darkness? Would they uncover the truth, or would it consume them? The question loomed as they ventured further, aware that the shadows held secrets they may never be prepared to face. The darkness enveloped them as they moved deeper into the wreckage. Each step felt like a descent into another world, one filled with disquieting whispers and ghostly echoes. Margaret could feel her heart thumping wildly in her chest, dread coiled around her as she clutched the locket tightly. Do you feel that? Daniel's voice cracked, cutting through the heavy silence. Margaret nodded but couldn't speak. Her throat felt dry, choking on unsaid fears. The shadows flickered at the edges of her vision, darting and vanishing like phantoms. They beckoned her forward as if urging her to unearth lost truths buried in the dark. The fissure leading them deeper pulsated with a grotesque light, twisting the shapes around them into distorted forms as they approached. They soon came upon a larger area, a hollow cavern covered in shimmering dust, sparking ominously under the blurry light above. Maybe we should turn back, Daniel said, his voice barely more than a whisper. But he didn't move, rooted to the spot like a statue, fear weighing him down. No. Margaret snapped, teeth clenching. We can't go back now. We need to know what happened here. She stepped forward, feeling a strange pull toward the shimmering dust. As she touched the ground, the very air grew electric, sparking with a tension that made her hair stand on end. The ground rumbled beneath them once again, yet this tremor felt different. It reverberated through her bones, awakening something long forgotten. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw the shadows coalescing into something more solid, more defined. The shape of a girl emerged, luminous against the encroaching darkness. Margaret's breath caught in her throat. Emily. She rasped, the name tasting bittersweet on her tongue. The figure's mouth moved, forming a silent scream that echoed straight into Margaret's heart. Something was wrong, so terribly wrong. Though her eyes were locked with the shimmering apparition, Margaret felt as though the shadows were curling around her, pulling at her very soul. Stay back! Daniel shouted, panic lacing his voice as he grabbed Margaret by the shoulder. What if it's a trick? We don't know what we're dealing with. But Margaret felt an overwhelming urge to break free, to reach out. She needs help. She insisted, shaking off his grip. Look at her. Emily's eyes, vacant and hollow, seemed to search for something, perhaps even salvation. A sound bubbled up from deep within, a chilling whisper, "Find me." Margaret pressed forward, drawn into the light, but the shadows tightened around her like a vice. They wailed in anguish, drowning in despair as they lunged forward, desperate for attention. "Margaret!" Daniel cried, horror flashing across his features. "Don't!" But with each step she took, each gasp of air, the shadows wailed louder, drowning out Daniel's voice. She reached out, trembling fingers stretching toward Emily. Could this whisper lead them to the truth, or deeper into the abyss? Suddenly, the ground trembled violently beneath their feet, a thunderous roar echoing through the cavern. Dust and debris fell around them, striking Margaret's arms like tiny stones. The shadows surged forward, faces twisted with grief, suffocating her will to move. In that moment of absolute chaos, Emily raised her hand toward Margaret, eyes glistening with tears that ignited in the darkness. "Help me," the spirit implored again, this time louder, echoing around them as the shadows recoiled. Margaret's breath quickened. This was the moment. She had to save her. "Hold on!" she screamed, lunging forward as the ground gave way beneath her. Would she fall into the void, or could she reach Emily in time? The darkness blurred everything around her. It was now or never. As she stretched her hand toward the outstretched one of the girl lost in the shadows, the question flickered in her mind as she hurtled toward the unknown: what had Emily truly become, and could her soul ever find peace? Margaret's fingers grazed Emily's outstretched hand, and in that fleeting moment, a jolt of energy surged through her. The shadows shrieked, getting louder, angrier, as if she had disturbed some ancient ritual. She felt time slow, her heart raced. Was this the connection she had been searching for? The icy grasp of the shadows tightened, pulling at her ankles, dragging her towards the crumbling abyss. "Margaret!" Daniel shouted, his voice piercing through the chaos. He lunged, grabbing her arm just in time, gripping her like a lifeline. "Don't let go," she urged, feeling the weight of the darkness trying to consume her. She needs us." But even as she said it, doubt crept in. What was she reaching for? A lost girl, or something more sinister hidden in the murk? Emily's eyes widened, desperation etched on her translucent face. "Help me!" The shadows roared again, an unholy cacophony that made the walls quiver around them. They twisted into grotesque shapes, wailing in a language lost to time. As the air thickened, Margaret's breath quickened, her thoughts becoming a whirlwind. What had happened to Emily? What had turned her from a girl with a bright smile into this tragic wraith? "Let me go!" Margaret shouted, yanking her arm free from Daniel's grasp. "I can save her." "No. You're not thinking." Daniel implored, panic flaring in his deep-set eyes. "This isn't a game. What if you're wrong?" But the reality of their situation felt different, electric and raw. The shadows were alive, and at their center was Emily, pulsing like a heartbeat amid terror. Margaret choked on her fear but pushed it down. "I can't turn back now. I need to do something." She took a deep breath and summoned her courage, pushing past the bone-chilling dread. One step, then another, plunging into the chaos as someone, somewhere whispered, "Help her, help yourself." The moment Margaret crossed the threshold of shadow into Emily's glowing aura, the silence fell like a blanket. There was stillness, as if time paused to witness the confrontation. "Emily," Margaret breathed, voice trembling with urgency. "What happened to you? Why are you trapped here?" The apparition's face flickered, a blend of sorrow and anger. "The truth, Margaret. The truth. You have to tell me." Margaret pressed, urged by a desperate need to understand as the shadows coiled at her feet, ready to draw her into the depths of despair. With a sudden flash, Emily surged forward, the lights around her brightening momentarily, illuminating the cavern before dimming again. "They can't know. You have to." The words trailed off, engulfed by the shadows filling the space with an oppressive weight. Margaret felt a wrenching in her gut, as if she were about to lose something essential, her chance for redemption, something deep and sacred to Emily. "What can't I know?" Margaret shouted, but Emily's shining face was already fading, retreating back into the darkness. Panic surged. Her heart hammered. Daniel's voice, muffled by despair, echoed behind her. "Margaret! Get out now! Please!" But she couldn't leave. Not yet. As she hovered between the world of the living and the lost realm of shadows, a thought struck her, piercing through the turmoil: was saving Emily worth the risk of losing herself? As if ignited by that realization, the shadows surged above her, looming ominously. "Find the truth," they hissed in 1,000 distorted voices. Margaret's mind raced, eyes darting from Daniel's fearful face to Emily's retreating form. This was bigger than her, much larger than she could ever grasp. And then, with a final surge of desperate hope, she reached into the depths of her memory, grasping at the only clue that had flickered in the chaos. I will find you." But even as she said it, the shadows lunged, swallowing her whole. Daniel's scream echoed in her mind like a fading echo, leaving her hanging on the brink of an abyss where answers lay buried deep. Margaret! And just like that, she was gone. Lost. What awaited her in the dark? Would she unearth the truth, or was she destined to join Emily in the limbo of forgotten souls? The answers lingered just beyond reach, enticing yet terrifying, as a new shadow loomed ahead. Margaret felt herself pulled into the dark void, an unsettling stillness wrapping around her like a thick fog. The shadows encased her, devouring every sense she had. She couldn't tell which way was up or down, only that she was plunging deeper into a place where light struggled to exist. "Emily," she whispered, the name barely escaping her lips. In the silence that followed, Margaret's heart pounded like a drum in a haunting parade, echoing in the emptiness. If there was a way out, she had to find it, but as she moved, something brushed against her cheek, icy and tangible, sending shivers down her spine. "Margaret!" A voice slithered out from the dark, barely above a whisper, blending with the palpable dread. Fear seized her chest, squeezing the air from her lungs. What was this place? And who was calling her? She scanned the pitch black, desperate for answers. "Emily!" She called again, firming her resolve. "Tell me what I need to know." A faint light flickered in the distance, a glimmer of hope among the desolation. Gritting her teeth, she propelled herself towards it, the shadows thrumming around her like a living entity trying to keep her from reaching the source. "Don't listen to her." A rasping voice echoed, filled with malice. "You're not meant for the truth." Margaret faltered, caught off guard. "Why? What do you want?" The shadows coalesced, forming twisted faces that grimaced, their mouths stretching into impossibly wide grins. "We thrive on despair. Feeding off the lost. You'll join us soon enough." She shook her head, panic rising inside her like a scorching wave. "No. I want to let you take me." With renewed fervor, she forced herself towards the glimmer, the light growing brighter as she steadied her breath. It wasn't just Emily she was reaching for, it was a chance to escape, to uncover the reality hidden within the darkness. As she neared the light, it swelled, transforming into an ethereal silhouette. Emily's form became clear, shimmering with warmth and paleness, emerging from the chaos. But there was something different in her eyes, now dark, swirling depths that hinted at tormented secrets. "Margaret!" Emily cried, desperation lacing her voice. "You shouldn't be here. You have to turn back." "What do you mean?" "I can help you," Margaret shouted, fighting the shadows that clawed at her heels. "There's a cost," Emily pleaded, agony etched on her face. "You'll lose everything, your memories, your very essence." The shadows writhed, their laughter unfurling like smoke around them. "Let her choose, Em. Let her join us. It will be so much sweeter to feast on her despair." "Please, you have to listen," Emily begged, tears shimmering in her eyes. "I never wanted you to find me like this. I was trying to protect you." Margaret felt the weight of silence press down, a freezing pressure that filled her with doubt. The shadows surged closer, whispering insidious promises of power and oblivion. Accept your fate. Embrace the darkness. They hissed. Fight it, Margaret. Emily shot back, her glow flickering like a candle under the onslaught. You can't trust them. Trust your heart. Margaret's heart raced. What if this was all a trap meant to ensnare her? Yet, turning her back felt like facing an eternal pit of despair. The truth that hovered on the edge of her consciousness beckoned, or was it just another ploy of the darkness? As she stood at that precipice, her mind flooded with memories of laughter, love, and days spent under the sun. No. I refuse to lose my soul. She shouted, defiance igniting within her, and right then, she made her choice, but the consequences of that choice hung palpably in the air, echoing through the void. Would stepping closer to Emily revive the light within, or would it drag them both into a darkness with no escape? Suddenly, the shadows recoiled, a barrier forming as if sensing the shift in her determination. But just as Margaret reached for Emily's hand, the fabric of the abyss cracked. A blinding flash erupted, pushing out against the void, and reality wavered. Margaret! The scream split the air, sharp and frantic. She felt herself being pulled apart, torn between two worlds, each promising truth but threatening annihilation. In that agonizing moment, as the light and darkness twisted around her, one question surged above all: what would become of them both if the shadows ripped her away for good? And just like that, she felt everything shatter. Margaret awoke with a gasp, her body inexplicably heavy yet warm. The air around her smelled sweet, a stark contrast to the oppressive darkness she had just escaped. Light flooded her senses, the brightness stinging her eyes as they fluttered open. She squinted against the harshness, focusing on the soft contours of an unfamiliar room filled with sunlight, where the sounds of birds chirping filtered through open windows. Margaret! She shot upright, a jolt of adrenaline firing through her as she recognized the voice. It was Daniel, relief etched across his face. He rushed to her side, worry mingling with joy. Thank God, you're awake. But confusion churned in her gut. What happened? The shadows, Emily, the memories rushed back like a tidal wave. What did I miss? Is she gone? Emily. Daniel's brow furrowed, and Margaret noticed the deep lines etched on his face now, especially evident amid his earlier relief. You were in a sort of trance. The shadows, he paused, drawing a shaky breath. Your heart rate spiked and then you vanished. I thought, his voice broke. Thought I was lost. She finished for him, her mind racing. But the truth. The unfinished business. Daniel shook his head, confusion swirling deeper. You called out to her fiercely, then it was like you were consumed. I don't know how to explain it. The next thing I knew, you. Margaret listened, heart pounding. Every word he uttered brought a fresh wave of anxiety. Had she truly escaped, or had she dragged something sinister with her? But I have to return. I need to find her, to set her free. Margaret, Daniel pleaded, urgency lining the edges of his tone. You don't need to. You're back now. You're safe. No. I can't just leave her. I have to. But before she could finish her thought, the air shimmered, a ripple breaking the barrier of reality. With it came a soft voice, all too familiar. Help me. Margaret's heart raced again, eyes wide. The sound echoed softly in the room, chilling her to the core. She turned to Daniel, desperation evident in her shaking hands. Did you hear that? Margaret, focus. He said, gripping her arms firmly. That's what I'm talking about. You need to let this go. We can find a way to. We can't find a way if I don't know what the truth is. Margaret's voice rose in desperation that clashed against the tenderness of Daniel's touch. His gaze darted away for a moment and something shifted in the room, an unseen tension winding tighter, as though the atmosphere cried for release. The truth may not be what you expect. What does that even mean? In a swirl of motion, she stood up, pulling away from him. Something inside her burned to know, to confront the shadows that awaited her, but even the thought terrified her. Margaret. Daniel's voice broke through her spiraling thoughts. Listen, please. You don't have to do this. Yet Margaret only felt the urgent pull of that whisper. Where are you? She called, the echo of her voice sending cold chills through the silence. Almost as if answering her plea, the light around her dimmed and shifted. The shadows that had haunted her like specters began to twist and stretch, forming the outline of a body. No! Daniel shouted, fear racing in his eyes. But Margaret took a step closer, undeterred. Emily. The form solidified into that of the girl she had known in childhood, a girl full of life who now stood before her, translucent yet full of impending urgency. Find me, remember. Emily's voice threaded through the air, pulling Margaret inexorably closer, heart echoing with the weight of Emily's pain. Forgive me. Margaret cried without thinking. I wasn't there for you. Your strength, Margaret, Emily insisted, her face twisted into a mask of sorrow. It was always you. Find the truth. Before it's too late. It's too late right now, Emily. It's too late to save anyone. Margaret's voice cracked, the weight of her decision crashing down. The girl's form began to fade, shadows licking at her edges. Face it. She implored in a wail that cut through, rising in urgency. Face what you fear. Don't let them take you. Margaret reached for Emily, stepping closer with desperation burning in her. I won't leave you again. I promise. Yet the light flickered perilously, shadows creeping back to claim her. She sensed the truth buried deep within. Beneath every terror, every anguished scream, lay a reality she had to confront. A deep breath steadied her resolve, and she shook off Daniel's hold, feeling strength born from sorrow radiate through her veins. I will not abandon you. She shouted, the hunger for justice propelling her back toward the shadows that hovered at the edges of her vision. As she closed her eyes, everything beyond Emily's fading form turned black, and she felt the echo of the shadows wrap around her again. Margaret's spirit surged as she broke through the darkness. The echoes, the whispers, they pressed in, yet she would not fall. Not this time. Tell me. She screamed into the black, a challenge that reverberated all around her. Show me the truth. Suddenly, light exploded around her, enveloping the chaos in warmth. In that moment, the shadows pulled away, and the sound of Emily's voice grew louder, clearer, all fears banished in a radiant glow. Set me free, and with that, Margaret understood. What had held them bound wasn't merely anger but a desperate plea for understanding. She grasped the memory, the events of that night, every second revealing the truth hidden beneath. As the light swelled, shattering the shadows entirely, she let go of fear and embraced the hope that flickered within her chest. In that fierce wave, she understood the sacrifice required for liberation. She would cleanse the pain of the past, freeing Emily and all lost souls tethered to anguish. And as she stepped beyond the shadows into the new dawn, the weight of sorrow lifted, and a rush of moments buried deep in her heart came flooding back. Together again, they would confront the truth. Together, they would be free. As the world transformed around her, she felt the darkness hiss and wail before disappearing completely. In its place blossomed a horizon filled with light, redemption, and memories of love forgotten. It was the beginning of peace after the long struggle, and Margaret smiled, her spirit soaring high in the illuminated sky. Thank you, she whispered, and the echoes materialized into whispers of gratitude. Now the real journey began, the truth would blossom, and the soul would soar, finally unchained. As the last remnants of night faded, Margaret stepped forward, a soul anew, and she knew in her heart, Emily would find her way too. The whispers of the past faded gently behind her, and dawn embraced her with open arms. Help me would no longer be a cry for despair but a call for enlightenment, a bridge to a new beginning. Join me, Margaret murmured, and together we'll illuminate the way. The sun broke over the horizon, signaling not an end, but the triumph of truth, an unfolding where the shadows could no longer hold sway. Now, if you found this conclusion as wild and engaging as we did, here's what you need to do: you need to subscribe now and stay tuned for the next exclusive stories that will blow your mind. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help souls like Emily find their way, and don't wait even one more second to flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this epic ending. Lastly, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need this conclusion in their lives. Your support is everything.